El próximo 25 de marzo, como parte de su gira mundial 360 grados, se presenta en Chile el popular grupo U23. Consuelo Saavedra viajó a Nueva York y conversó con sus integrantes. Bono y The Edge hablaron de música, pero también de sus preocupaciones en lo social y político. En exclusiva, U23 en la entrevista del domingo.
La política y los derechos humanos siempre han jugado un rol importante en su música y en sus shows, y según he leído, han incorporado a Egipto en este espectáculo. ¿Qué opinan de lo que está pasando en ese país?
Oh, the world is changing. Keeping our fingers crossed. You know, obviously democracy is what we all pray for, but who knows? It's too early to say. I don't think it's able to stop this movement towards freedom, because freedom is a natural follow-on from access to information. And it used to be that to control populations, totalitarian regimes had to control information. They can't do it anymore. The internet, it's just impossible. You know, you can try, but it's impossible. In the 90s, when the Berlin Wall came down, people said it was largely to do with the fact that people in East Berlin were watching MTV, and they knew what they weren't having. And so there's this demand not just for people to be heard, but for people to hear. They want access to information. They're demanding to hold their leaders accountable to that information, those facts, those statistics. You know, where did that money go? You know, your record. All these things are just becoming part of the modern political process. There's nowhere to hide. There's no such thing as privacy anymore. As a person as a public life, sometimes I mourn that, but in politics, I do not.
¿Y qué me dicen de Libia? Una de sus canciones llevó el nombre de Trípoli por un tiempo.
Consuelo. They're very well researched.
That's right. The working title, you know, again, I don't want to pass judgment on Gaddafi. I've always thought his dress sense was his strongest point.
Yes.
But again, as Bono says, it's like,
and his bodyguards.
Yeah, this is we're in the middle of something happening. We don't know where it's going to go, but again, hopefully it'll end in democracy.
You never met him? ¿Han estado con él alguna vez? ¿En Davos? ¿Alguno de sus parientes?
No, I'd rather avoid that if I could.
A propósito, ¿qué piensan de los artistas que tocaron para Gaddafi y ahora están arrepentidos y devolviendo el dinero? ¿Qué les parece?
It's very hard. People didn't know just how ugly that regime was, and I'm sure some people feel burned by it. But Ireland has a long history of relationship with Gaddafi because some of the terrorist organizations active in the 70s received funding from him. So we knew who he was growing up in Ireland, and I personally have very strong feelings about him very early on.
But shouldn't artists know? ¿Pero acaso un artista no debiera saber para quién está tocando?
I don't know. It's a good question.
¿Ustedes saben para quién tocan?
Do we always? I think we try, yeah, to inform ourselves about where we're headed or what's going on. But you know, there's always the thing that you get blindsided by, that you know, somebody forgot to tell you. You know this, but I think we'd notice if we were playing for
Gaddafi. I think he'd notice if we were playing for him.
I think so.
I can assure you of that.
Your last show before Santiago was... Su último show antes de Santiago fue en Sudáfrica. ¿Cómo fue tocar en un continente que les es tan querido, sobre todo para ti, Bono?
What you're seeing in Cairo and what you're seeing coming out of Tunisia and crossing Libya is going right through the continent of Africa, but it's going right through the world. And this is the start of the 21st century. It's 2011, but you can feel it's kicking off. And the pyramid, so-called pyramid, Egyptian image here, is being inverted. And that's what's happening. And this kind of top-down thinking that has ruled the 20th century is outmoded. It's a whole new way of seeing the world now. And that's what I'm excited about Africa. I went there and to meet poverty campaigners from the continent who are just going to make people like me redundant. Tech savvy, smart, entrepreneurial
minds that are transforming Africa. Africa's a hugely wealthy place. It's just the people are poor because the economies have been so mismanaged. As information technology is changing that game, cell phones. Do you know the prevalence of cell phones there's an indicator as to the level of democracy that you get with cell phones. It's extraordinary because controlling information, as we were saying, is impossible.
¿Y cuál es el rol de un artista en este siglo XXI?
Not to be boring.
Not to be boring.
That's the first thing.
The problem with politicians and politics is that it's so short term because people have 2, 3, 4 years maximum and then they're out. So they can't really afford to really see things in a very long term way. And I guess artists can dream decades in advance and really think about things in a way that politicians could never afford to.
We've got to be careful because, you know, we have high-minded ideas that are in our heads and in our hearts, but music, we're a rock and roll band. We have to remember that our first duty is to turn up the volume and make the ground shake.